Nisha is in the house. That's right. Nisha Jackson with Ventana Wellness and the clinic. And I tell you what, we're going to talk about donuts, depression, and stroke. I have no idea if they're all related. They could be. But I just want to say, first of all, Nisha, nice to see you.
Thank you.
And thanks for sending Dr. Joel Klein. What a hoot.
He's quite a character. I know he is. He's a great doctor. He has so much information in his head, so much information, and
he is
really
so passionate, man.
He is passionate. He really wants to help people get well.
Yeah.
Which I think is wonderful.
Yeah, well, he does. He just the new edition at Ventana, and by the way, the website.
Yes, VentanaWellness.com.
Yep, go there. It's a tremendous resource, and check it out. By the way, if you have any questions for Nisha, she's going to be with us for quite a while this morning, and you are more than welcome to join us. The phone number is 776-5368. We can conference you in. All right, I see you have a picture of a donut there.
Yes. I actually love donuts, but I feel so terrible when I eat them. And I've never, besides the obvious fact of they're loaded with sugar and fat, and that lethal combination that really elevates your insulin level, makes you tired, makes you crave sugar within 20 or 30 minutes following. Like one donut's not nearly enough, right?
Right.
But now we have new research that says that donuts actually cause depression.
Is that because of the sugar spike?
Well, they think that it actually is related to the serotonin. And I know that you probably remember me talking in the past about how junk food actually does work because it raises serotonin. So sugar and donuts and junk food raise serotonin quickly, and it makes you feel good. Makes you feel happy, makes you feel satiated. All of a sudden,
your problem is?
All of a sudden your mood is lifted. But the problem is that when it dives 10, 15, 20 minutes later, it goes down even further, which makes you feel depressed. So they've also noticed that people that have excessive amounts of junk food, and that includes sugary, rock star type drinks, all of those calorie-oriented sugary drinks, those foods not only elevate insulin and make your blood sugar unstable, but they also lead to problems with depression and also problems with fatigue. So this study is actually an interesting study because it's the first study that actually shows a direct correlation between depression and junk food.
All right, so the sugar spike and the sugar crash is not good.
Not good, and it's not just limited to donuts. It's limited to it's generally junk food. And sugary drinks is a real problem. But they also noticed that cardiovascular disease, heart disease, diabetes, and high blood pressure was also directly correlated with the junk food. Now, I realize this is not a major breakthrough, right? I mean, common sense tells you that this should be, but it's just nice to have research to say, yep, donuts, depression.
Okay, there you go. DD, don't do it. All right, I want to come to recovery after a stroke. We've had some very close relatives go through this.
Yes.
And fortunately, the recovery for my mother-in-law has been very good. But boy, it can be debilitating in it.
Yes. Well, now we have new research that's starting to show that you can actually activate different areas of your brain. And I don't know if you remember, Perry, but we had a physician on our radio program a couple of years ago by the name of Dr. Amen.
Oh, right.
And he's written multiple books, maybe 15 or 20 books on the brain and how you can identify different areas of the brain that are really not activating itself well or working well. And he can actually do an imaging of the brain and identify what areas are not activated and then give you exercises to actually get that area of the brain working better. And there's a new book out called Awakening the Brain that I've been reading lately that is just an excellent it identifies new research that looks at different areas of the brain and what may be happening with the stroke. And I wanted to share some of these pieces of information with our listeners and our viewers today because I want people to know that there's things that you can do to reactivate your brain, especially if you're feeling like you've got this brain scramble going on, which so many people do today. So there is hope for people that say, I've always been this way, I've always been disorganized, or I've always been forgetful, or I've always been depressed, or I've always been negative. And this includes people who have had something as serious as a stroke where they say this is just the way it's going to be. Wow. There is hope for people like this, and this was a really good book for me to learn different ways that you can reactivate the brain. So I wanted to share a few of those
let's do it
today.
Yeah.
One of those things that I wanted to share with you you today is this concept of we only use 10% of our brain. And, you know, we've heard people say that over and over. We only use 10% of our brain. We're thinking, how could we possibly use 90% more of our brain than what we're using now? But she explained it in this book in a different way than I'd ever heard it. And it makes sense to me because it has a lot to do with our emotions. So let's take, for instance, what would be a good example? Maybe you're rushing around in the morning and you're running late, which would be my morning this morning. You're running late and a couple of emergencies come up that you didn't expect, right? And so what happens is that you are really stressed out about that particular situation. And then you go from that situation to, let's say, a radio program, TV program, where you have to be sort of on your game and be able to talk well. The problem with it is that a lot of people will actually experience something right on the heels of something stressful. So let's say you go from something stressful in the morning to maybe your children's program at school.
Yeah.
And then you get home later and you don't even really remember anything about your children's program at school, and you think, wow, that's weird. How could I not remember any of that? I was there.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is that our brain actually cannot reorganize itself if you're still emotionally tied to something that happened prior. So this is really good information for people because if you think about the pace at which we're moving through our lives, right? We're moving at such a quick pace that we have not put away what we just dealt with before we move into another situation, because our situations and our to-do list is just like one big, slur of events, right? So we don't move from one event to the next event and sort of clear ourselves before we start the new event, and therefore we can't really remember anything. And if we were to go into, let's say, the children's program and we were to clear our brain of what just happened, so just consciously say, I'm going to put aside the emergencies that I just had at home this morning, and I'm going to focus on my children's program right now, and I'm going to be 100% present right now.
You got to tell yourself this.
Tell yourself this, and this is an interesting thing about the new research with the brain is you actually have to tell yourself what you're doing. Right now, I am choosing to be 100% present in this situation so that I can take in everything that is here with my children's program and really feel it, because it's the emotions that help you remember something. And we've not known that before. So if you're still ramped up about what happened at home in the morning and stressed out, you won't be able to have the emotions of, let's say, excitement and, being proud of your children or whatever it is at that children's event that you just went to. You won't even remember it. You won't remember the songs, you won't remember the play or whatever it might be, because you're still thinking about what happened this morning and maybe what you need to do after you're done with the play. So it's very interesting that they've tied it to emotions, and I want to talk a little bit about how they've tied it to emotions and what that means just from a molecular standpoint.
Well, the other part of this is these things, iPhones, iPads, any of these devices. If you had an emotional morning, you're going to go to your children's event. In between that, you've had 2 emails and a couple of things that reminded you of something you didn't do.
Right.
I find it very interesting how did Steve Jobs, the president of Apple, become so successful? He would go into his board meetings and he told all of his board members, no electronic devices. Yeah. And here he is, that's their company.
Right.
So he unplugged his entire staff before they'd go into a creative meeting, so the whole mind was focused on that meeting.
Yes.
And so we're finding out the attention span now is about 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. What do you do with that?
Well, okay, so this is the other part of this new research about the brain that's so important. Not only can we reprogram our brain, so this thing where people are plagued, Perry, with the fact that they can't remember anything. They're plagued.
Can't remember what?
They're scattered. They have brain fog. They don't remember events because.
I think I have to take a break. I can't remember, but I think one's coming up. But go ahead.
So this is the deal with the 3-minute attention span. So in our brains, we've heard about the left brain and we've heard about the right brain, right?
Yeah.
The left brain is the side of the brain that we can go from the past to the present very fluidly. We can go back and forth real quickly between the past and the present, which is somewhat damaging for us because we carry events from the past to the present all the time, which creates a lot of worry, it creates a lot of anxiety. So the left side of our brain, so we're still talking about the left side of the brain is also the side of the brain that creates a lot of where we remember events, we categorize events, we attach pictures and emotion to events. So you can see the left side of the brain is sort of the busy side of the brain where we're thinking all the time. We can't stop thinking, but we're moving from the past to the present all the time. I mean, past to the future, all the time. The right side of the brain can only function with what is going on at this particular moment. That's it. It doesn't go from the past to the future. It just stays right in this moment. It's also the more relaxing side of our brain, the creative side of our brain, kind of more the lovely side of our brain, right? The problem with us today is we spend nearly 99% of our time in the left side of our brain making ourselves literally crazy. Right? Because we're not in the present. We're moving back and forth from the past to the future constantly and worrying, thinking about our to-do list, thinking about what we need to do or what we haven't done. The thing that we can do that the research is actually showing now is actually just stopping, resetting our brain and saying, I choose to move from the left side of our brain to the right side of our brain and just relax in this exact moment. It works.
But you've been doing some research here and come to find out left brain very active, right brain very focused. And is that too simplistic? Yeah,
left brain, it's sort of, I call it the mind chatter side of the brain. So it's our constant, we're not doing enough, we need to do more, we need to fix what happened in the past, prepare for the future, we're not really in the present. The right side of the brain is more dealing with where we're at today, and we need to try to move into the right side of our brain more. But this is the fascinating thing about what research has shown is that you can direct by just telling yourself and maybe doing some slow, deep breaths, you can direct yourself to stop. So if you're feeling anxious about your to-do list, which I do every single day, if you feel anxious about your to-do list, you can consciously move yourself out of that into the right brain. And I would encourage everybody that's listening today and watching that if you could just try that when you're feeling anxious about your life or about the 4 emails that you just got or the 2 texts that you just got, just to take a couple of deep breaths and say, I'm consciously moving into the right side of my brain and I'm going to be present with where I'm at right now so I can fully enjoy what I'm doing and be grateful for where I'm at right now. And then therefore what will happen is that if you can be present with whatever you're doing, even if it's in a meeting or it's spending some time at the dinner table with your family, whatever it might be, if you can really be present and you can feel the emotions, whatever emotion that might be of that particular time, you will remember it. So this will cure a lot of people's memory problems if they just consciously tell themselves, stop the mind chatter on the left side, I'm moving to the right side. They need to take a right turn. Take a right turn.
I would imagine you could almost test this through blood pressure, couldn't you?
Well, this is part of the research they've done, is that people's blood pressure went down, their heart rate went down when they consciously moved to the right side of their brain. The other interesting things that happened, Perry, is their T cell count went up. That means their immune system actually got reactivated on the right side of the brain, which tells us we're not meant to be in this crazy mind chatter place that we keep ourselves in all day long. And the problem is that the food that we eat and the caffeine that we drink and all of these power drinks that we drink keep us in the left side of our brain because that's where we think we need to be. And I wanted to make one little comment about the cell phone that you just said. And this is an example of what I'm talking about as far as reprogramming your brain, and this is true after stroke or other brain injuries, that you can train your brain to do whatever you want it to do. So let's take the cell phone for instance. There's a new disorder that actually has an ICD-9. It has a medical diagnosis code attached to it, believe it or not. Okay, that means it's a real disorder. It's called the checking disorder. And it means checking an email or a phone message or a text on your phone. It is a checking disorder. And if you see people, just walk around and watch people today, you can see people absolutely obsessed with checking their phone. And that includes me. So you have your phone in your hand all of the time, and you're constantly checking. I mean, how many times do you turn your phone on and check for an email or a text or a call?
It's constant.
It's constant. So it's called a checking disorder, and I would venture to say that the majority of America has it. So that
was there a pill for this?
that was something we actually did to train our brain to do that, right? We didn't do that 10 years ago. We didn't have a checking disorder 10 years ago.
No.
So we weren't constantly having our phone in our hand and checking emails and texts 10 years ago. That was something that we trained our brain to do. So I'm just telling you, you can train your brain not to do that, or train your brain to do other things if you want it to be trained. So why not train ourselves in learning how to relax, and learning how to breathe right, and learning how to calm ourselves, just like we trained ourselves to have this obsessive disorder of checking our phones.
When somebody has a stroke and part of the brain is turned off, I mean, that's a simplistic way of doing it. Can that be reactivated?
Yes.
Or does another part of the brain take over?
No, there's actually tests that you can do now, and you can look online at the, it's called brainrecovery.com, and you can actually look on the website and take tests that will identify which area of the brain is really not activated well. And this comes from our lifestyle too, not just injury or stroke, but we can deactivate certain areas of our brain because we're really concentrated in one area. So if some people are very computer-oriented, they might be deactivating the side of our brain that's more artistic or more fluid in the area of the arts. But our brain was really meant to be, our whole brain was meant to be used. So you can take tests to identify which area of the brain is not activated, and then you can, there's a program that you can do that will reactivate that area of the brain. And a lot of it has to do with little mental exercises that you can do. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is to give your brain what it needs. Eating whole foods, avoiding sugar,
I knew it was going to come to that.
avoiding the preservatives and the artificial colorings and the boxed foods, and really getting back to whole foods and giving yourself the nutrients that it needs, some of the minerals, and the other important thing is the essential oils, krill oil or fish oil, and then also getting enough sleep at night, because sleep is absolutely mandatory. It's the only time of the entire 24 hours in a day that you can rest your brain and reboot it for the next day.
All right, the big omega-3 fish oil, big thing. There's a lot of varieties out there, and I know that you don't get into brands, but who can you trust in this?
Well, you want to make sure that it's mercury-free. Mercury, you don't want any contaminants in it, and most of the fish oils actually say mercury-free if they are. But krill oil is another oil, essential oil, that's very good. One other thing that I want to talk about, I'm going to switch subjects for just a second, that I've had a lot of people call in and want to know what they can do for their pain. And I just want to remind our listening audience of an old-time remedy that works so incredibly well, and that is castor oil. Hold your nose. Now, you can drink this, but what's even better is to take strips, like muslin strips, because some people are really plagued with back pain or shoulder pain or neck pain, and this works so well. This is a very old-time remedy. Lots of research that has been done in the area of castor oil. It's one of the most healing oils out there. You can buy it in the grocery store. You can get it in the health food sections of the grocery store, and you want to soak those strips in hot water and put them on the injured area or the sore area, and put some heat applied to the top of it, and just let it sit on there for 20 minutes to an hour, and it is amazing how much better that helps with sore muscles, tendons, and joints, or ligaments that have been injured. So that might be something you want to do. That's an email that just is kind of reoccurring, is what can I do for my pain? And that's something simple that we can all do when we're sitting down watching TV at night.
Well, there's a lot of these joint supplements out there. Are they any good?
There are many joint supplements, and the chondroitin and the glucosamine and the MSM can be very helpful, but I think actually applying something to an injured area can be very helpful too. So that was something I just wanted to plug in there.
I'm glad
castor
you did.
Oil.
You know, because I think I don't know anybody that doesn't suffer with some kind of joint pain, but boy, and I was standing in the store the other day and I looked at all the variety of joint pains and I go, well, what do you do?
Yes, yeah, I know. It's kind of overwhelming to look at all the different supplements. But again, I really believe, and this conversation that we've had about the brain, it's so much tied into our nervous system, and when we're very stressed out, our nervous system is in this kind of this scramble, And that leads to elevated cortisol, the stress hormone, which leads to inflammation. So much of our pain, Perry, is related to what's going on with this inflammatory process related to stress. So again, I think just rebooting ourselves, and I've kind of started saying these 3 words: stop. You know, if you've got that mind chatter going on, stop, reset. So reset your brain, and then go. Stop, reset, go. And that will help you sort of remember, okay, I'm getting a little out of control in the left side of my brain. I need to move to the right side of my brain. And this is something that all of us can do, whether you've had a brain injury, a stroke, or if you just have a really crazy lifestyle, which most of us do, is just to mentally reset yourself so that you can get yourself where you need to be, and that is in the present at this particular moment.
What does exercise have to do with brain health?
Well, exercise is so important because it increases circulation to our brain and oxygen to our brain. So without oxygen and circulation, we're a little upside down. And I often use the analogy with my patients: if you work your brain all week long with this left-sided to-do list thing, you know, always accomplishing, trying to do something or trying to catch up, but you're not working your body, you'll develop this terrible imbalance between your brain and your body. And our brain and our body were meant to be in harmony with each other. And most people think of your brain separate from your body, but they're meant to work together. Obviously, they're connected, right? So they're meant to work together. And this imbalance that people get leads to fatigue and depression, and again, this brain scramble that people get, that we don't want to have that. So exercise is huge to just to establish and to restore that balance between the brain and the body.
Wow. Well, Nisha, fascinating. Thank you. Your website has all of these things and more.
Yes.
And check it out at ventanawellness.com. And Dr. Joel Klein, who's been here a couple of times, is part of that clinic now. And let me encourage you to check it out, especially if you want some good advice on brain health, stroke recovery, hormonal balancing, which is a biggie.
Yes, yes.
Get everybody
and
chilled out.
We can check these areas out for you, but common sense would tell you, stop, reset, then go.
Stop, reset, and go. There's the 3 words for your day and for your week. Thank you. All right, we'll be right back on Focus Today.